everyone. Welcome to the Pre-Seed Show. I'm Anamitra, your host and co-founder of A4 Capital. Today, I'm super psyched, actually super thrilled to welcome Tejas, who's the co-founder and co-CEO of Hightouch. We spoke with Kashish, his co-founder, a little while ago, but with all the advances in AI and all the achievements that Hightouch has been doing over the past sort of year, few months, we thought it particularly pertinent to hear from Tejas. Couldn't be more thrilled. So Tejas, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, Anamitra. Excited to be here.
So Tejas, everyone has heard of Hightouch in the Valley. Everyone who's a VC, who's an industry expert, especially folks in the data teams. But for a lot of people who don't know, especially founders who've heard of Hightouch but don't quite know but they know the success of Hightouch, but they don't quite know what Hightouch does. Can you explain what does Hightouch actually do?
Yeah, for sure. So happy to explain about what Hightouch does. At a high level, we help business teams activate their data and operationalize it to actually do various business functions. So what do I mean by that? Well, I'll take marketing teams as an example. Marketing teams are always trying to send different communications to their customer to encourage them to do a certain goal. Maybe it's sign up online, maybe it's buy more products from their brand. And what actually happens is that nowadays, companies have so much information about what customers are doing, right? They have information about what pages they're viewing online, what pages on the website they're going to, what they've bought in the past, and all that information can really inform how a marketing team does their job. So what Hightouch does is we connect all the data that exists in the business, put in the hands of business teams like marketing, advertising, can even be customer service and other teams, and give them an easy tool that allows them to take any of that data, like find customers who, added something to the cart but didn't check it out, or bought with us last holiday season but not this year, and send it to a business tool where they can use it. So send it to Salesforce Marketing Cloud to send an email, send it to Facebook ads to go target those customers. And why is this like a hard problem? Well, in an enterprise environment, there's tons of data, right? There's tons of data in terms of data warehouses like Snowflake or Databricks or Google BigQuery. Companies are rapidly adopting these technologies, and they're using all that data for things like analytics, BI tools like Tableau, board meeting metrics. But it's really hard for business people like marketers to actually access that data. They oftentimes don't know SQL. They don't know how to use these technical BI tools. They weren't built for them. And it's really hard for them to operationalize that data to say something like, I want to send campaigns to customers as soon as these conditions are hit, because they're not engineers who can build code and automation. We have a platform that puts all that data into the hands of these business teams and sits directly on top of data warehouses like Snowflake and Databricks that companies are already using. Companies like PetSmart or Warner Music Group or NBA already have tons of data in there. And they deploy Hightouch on top, so the business teams can really get way more value out of them. Instead of just staring at reports, they can use that data to personalize their marketing, send ads to customers, change how they're doing customer support, and really activate that data across the business.
Right. Activation seems like an important part here, right? Which is like in the past, companies were dumping this data in some kind of a database or a data warehouse. Then they had analysts who would run queries to create groups and lists, and then maybe port those lists over to their application systems, marketing systems. Now you're saying that Hightouch kind of connects all the dots together, so that you can and you don't need to know SQL. You don't need to be able to query anything. You just need to state your problem, and the data will just appear in the right place.
Exactly. Like as a business team, you don't need to know how to use SQL. You don't need to know how to code automations. But then you can do really powerful stuff like, hey, go send a campaign to, I'm PetSmart and I want to send a campaign to all the customers and all the households with a pet with the birthday coming up. And as long as that data exists in data warehouses, we can make it happen. Or I'm the NBA and I want to send campaigns to customers based on like the current status of the game right now. And as long as you're collecting that kind of data, we can make it happen. But previously doing that required business teams to come up with ideas, write them down, send them over to data people or engineering teams to get in their sprint plan. And now with Hightouch, they can just move a lot faster. Because I think we're really hitting this environment, especially in enterprise companies, where everyone is data rich, but they're access poor, right? They have all this data inside of data warehouses. They can do all this analytics, but business teams on a day-to-day basis can't just use that data to do their job better. And that's the problem that we're solving. And that's really what we mean by data activation, right? We're not replacing all the SaaS tools out there. Companies use dozens and hundreds of them. We're not replacing data warehouses. We're just connecting the two and giving a really easy interface for business teams, especially marketing and advertising and teams that are trying to do things at scale with data to operationalize it and move faster.
Right. Most of Hightouch's customers are in the B2C space, large mega brands in the B2C space going after consumers, like the ones you mentioned, like Warner and NBA and so on. But the point you just mentioned, which is they are data rich because they're collecting tons of data every millisecond, but they're access poor. I haven't heard that before. Data rich, access poor. Can you talk about a little bit about what you mean by access poor?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it's a phrase we use internally, but before I dive into that, I'll just clarify. So yeah, we really, our sweet spot is kind of large consumer companies, but we work with companies across the stack. So, Grammarly, DocuSign, those are all customers of Hightouch as well. Lots of B2B companies, right? Like in Okta or at Hightouch, we even use Hightouch internally. What we're finding is that increasingly, every aspect of how a business runs is becoming more data driven. Even as a sales team, I might have hundreds or thousands of different leads or prospects I can go after, but I might want to prioritize those based on, not just the default stuff I have in Salesforce, like what's the last email I sent them, or when did I last contact this customer, or what stage of the sales process are they in. But I might want to prioritize those leads based on really rich data, like when's the last time they logged into the app, or how many users did they invite this month, or is their product usage going up or down? So those are kind of use cases that we can support here at Hightouch too. If that information is available in a data warehouse like Snowflake, we can easily move it into a system like Salesforce and then start using that to change how leads are being prioritized or anything like that. So B2C companies is definitely where the most value I think is delivered from data because they're just operating at a huge scale. But B2B companies and other industries all have these sort of data activation problems. Right. So what you asked about was data rich and access poor. To unwind this a bit, I think what we really see across the industry is that, companies are collecting an increasing amount of data. They have data about what are the exact things people are looking at the website, whether they're clicking. Companies have a lot of custom data that's unique to their business, not just stuff like website. For example, NBA, what's the current score of the game? Or PetSmart, tracking the customer's actual pets in the loyalty program where you can register a pet and their favorite food and their birthday. So companies have a bunch of data that's unique to them too. And they're moving all these data into data warehouses because they want to be able to really analyze what is the different things that's going on in my business that correlates with performance and how do we make each department better. But the real gap that we see is that business teams are really unable to activate that data and access it freely. Technical teams like data teams, data engineers, data scientists, they have the keys to the castle. They know how to code, they know how to use SQL, they know how to use these platforms. But business teams using it, there's still a gap there, especially when they want to automate something like a marketing campaign that's reacting to customer behavior. And that's why when we open our email inbox or sometimes go to Facebook ads, oftentimes we see ads or emails or something in the product that's not relevant to them. And you think, oh man, don't they know that I want to order this food again, I've ordered it 100 times, or I want to see this game, I've watched it 100 times. It's just because it's really hard for those business teams to operationalize the data. And that's the problem we're solving.
Right. My favorite are the retargeting ads that I get after I've already bought something as a result of an ad on Facebook. I just keep getting it. It's hard to shake it off. It wouldn't happen if the data was being activated in the appropriate way, if they were using Hightouch, for example.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's literally a top use case. Ad suppressions, right? Companies spend so much dollars towards gaining the impressions and clicks and all that stuff to their prospective customers on platforms like Facebook. They're paying crazy amounts of money for this. But if 20% of the customers seeing it recently made a purchase, they might not be the best ones to spend the money towards, right? So with Hightouch, it's as simple as go into your data warehouse and make a quick query using SQL or using our UI to say, I want to find customers who recently made a purchase, and then sending that over to an ad platform like Facebook and saying, don't show the customer these ads. And that whole process can be managed in just a few clicks with the platform like Hightouch. Whereas previously, again, it requires data teams to find the right data and then maybe export it to the marketing team every week as a CSV for them to upload into Facebook, which has latency and delays that causes issues to correctly suppressing those ads in ad networks. Or if it's a sophisticated company, maybe they build scripts and stuff to do this. But that requires every time you have a new campaign or new idea, you have to go ask an engineering team or technical team, right? So
that's right. That's right. Enabling the non-technical team, the business team, the marketing team to take action on the data that changes, makes their jobs easier, is I guess the game changer. It's a big game changer. I guess it's layers of sort of advantages you've built up, and this access part is a really critical one because it is the next wave.
Exactly.
That's right. So in this broad space, data and marketing, there have been a lot of companies. A lot of companies have tried to break out, tried to create categories. But what has been really interesting about Hightouch is you all have been able to create multiple sort of categories and make a name for yourselves, whether it was reverse ETL in the beginning or data activation now. And you're all so young. You, Josh, and Kashish, how were you able to break out, stand out in a crowded field?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think there's two aspects of it, right? When you think about how we were able to execute on really standing out in the market, which is a messy market. As you mentioned, there's dozens of companies or hundreds of companies between data and marketing technology. Sometimes they pitch similar value props too. So as a buyer, it can be kind of confusing, like what do I go with? But we were able to create categories, two categories actually in our company history so far. They both sound, and I will give a warning to anyone in the audience who's not in the space, kind of niche and peculiar if you're not familiar with the space, but they mean a lot to some of the buyers and the audience that we're targeting. So we'll talk about that in a second. But one is called reverse ETL. So reverse ETL means, there's an existing category in the data space called ETL, which means extract, transform, load. It basically means taking data from sources, extracting it, transforming it, and loading it into data warehouses. So now you can use it for analytics and BI and all sorts of stuff. So we came in and we said, hey, why are people just loading data into data warehouses? There's so much valuable data in the warehouse now in Snowflake. There's so much valuable information about customers. We should be loading it out of data warehouses too into the business applications like Salesforce and Facebook and stuff like that companies are using to engage with their customers. So we came up with the funny term, reverse ETL. It's like the opposite of ETL. And while it sounds kind of strange, it's actually very intuitive to the audience that we're targeting there, which is people who know the word ETL. And then composable CDP is the second term or second category that we came up with at Hightouch. And again, it's interesting. There's a similar dynamic between the two. There's an existing category in marketing called CDP. It means a customer data platform. And what companies are looking for is this one-stop shop where they have all their data about their customers and their business, and then it's all in one place in a SaaS tool. And then marketers are able to do things like build different audiences or cohorts of customers who didn't check out, customers who might be interested in this product, and activate that data to all these different business systems like Salesforce, Facebook, et cetera. It sounds kind of familiar to Hightouch, right? But what we realize is that, hey, the whole problem of getting all your data into that CDP solution in the first place is very difficult. It takes a ton of effort for companies to do that. And it's a big, big project that needs help from engineering and IT and different departments. Getting data all together into one place is a big project for these big companies. And the second thing we realize is that one place, the CDP, these SaaS solutions like Salesforce CDP, Adobe, Segment, all those solutions are kind of rigid, right? They say all your data should fit into contacts and events and website actions. But the reality is big companies like PetSmart, like the NBA, like Warner Music have a ton of other data that is really unique to their business, like pets or product inventory or households or bank balances or accounts and all these kinds of stuff. So we noticed those two flaws and we said, hey, we're going to come up with a new term that is going to attract the attention of people looking for CDP. And it's called composable CDP, which means sitting on top of your data warehouse where you have all this data, like Snowflake, Databricks, and offering a CDP. So yeah, I would say, what did we learn in this process and why has category creation worked so well for us as a business? Well, a couple of things. One, I would say the market has to be there, right? You have to identify an opportunity that is really disruptive to how things are going today. For example, in the case of reverse ETL, what we noticed was that, hey, tons of data teams are moving to these new technologies like Snowflake and Databricks that are really changing the game for the data warehousing space. And with Snowflake and Databricks and technologies like that, people are creating these new definitions inside of the data warehouse, like definitions for things like customer lifetime value or how much is this customer worth to me. And it's creating this situation where business teams are not asking, I don't want to just see those definitions in a reporting tool or in Tableau or in a chart. I want to be able to use those definitions because they're really interesting in terms of the marketing I'm sending out or how I'm talking to my customers. So there was this situation that was happening that was just kind of blowing up as companies invested more in these cloud data warehouses and as data became used more and more and more across the business, which is that business teams wanted more of it. They wanted it in their tools. So it's sort of a perfect timing to create this reverse ETL category. So that's just one example, but I would say the market timing has to be there. The second thing is not trying to make a term that makes sense for everyone at first. Like that's going to be a part of the future of building a very big business. But initially just focusing on a certain audience, like data engineers that might really understand this reverse ETL term and capitalizing on that instead of trying to make something generic for everyone. We've seen a lot of startups sort of flop around when they're trying to just serve everyone at a given time. And same with composable CDP. We wanted to target people who are looking for CDP because we knew as a smaller company at the time, that's not our long-term aspiration to just be a company in that category. We want our own category. But we first want to just tap into this space where there's tens or hundreds of millions of dollars of existing buyers looking for existing solutions.
Right. Makes a lot of sense. One of the other things that has stood out for me in sort of studying the way Hightouch operates is the focus and execution that you bring to the table, which is sort of maybe a secret to your success. One of the things you all have done really well early on is crushed sort of competitors, your startup competitors, folks like Census and others, and now you're going after the bigger guns, public companies like Adobe and Salesforce, a different tier of competition. Is it getting harder? Is it getting easier for you? How has the competitive threats changed and what does it mean from an execution perspective?
Yeah, well, I would say overall it's different, right? It's different between the early stage and the later stages. In the early stage, there's a lot of existential problems. For example, is there a big enough market here? Does my initial idea actually, fit with a specific audience that has enough buying demand to get me to the next stage of business? Which part of my product should I focus on? What's the thing that's really hitting the sweet spot for our customers? So in the early stages, I think there are a number of problems like that, right? That are difficult. But I would say in competing with large companies like Salesforce and Adobe and stuff like that, definitely comes with its own challenges and probably becomes harder over time. But it's also easier in some ways because we already have our name out there. We already have clients. We already have a product that we know has product market fit and is very disruptive to a certain ecosystem. So I won't say that it gets easier, but it just gets different, to be honest.
And I guess the product and the technical edge that Hightouch has, and then the speed at which you can innovate and build new features and products and to meet the market demand is maybe what differentiates you against companies like Adobe and Salesforce and others who require the data to be, it's a closed ecosystem for them. All the data needs to reside in their systems, and innovation there happens slower, I would guess.
Yeah, well, I would say fundamentally we take a different approach to the problem, right? Where Salesforce and Adobe are actually trying to become like a data platform for their customers, right? They're actually trying to say, hey, you should come to us and build your customer 360 inside of Salesforce's data cloud or inside of Adobe's, CDP or Experience Cloud. Get all your data into us, use all the Adobe and Salesforce products to collect it. We'll help you figure out what a customer is, etc. And a lot of the way they even charge, right? If you look at their pricing and packaging strategy, is charging for the amount of data you're storing in their system, the amount of customers you have. With Hightouch, we just take a fundamentally different approach that we think is better suited for the enterprise, right? If we were working on the same exact thing as Salesforce and Adobe and it was purely an execution game, that would be, still very possible, right? We've seen tons of companies break out like that. Like Braze is an example of that. That's, taken on Salesforce Marketing Cloud, the email and marketing tool. But I think what's really interesting for us is that we have a fundamentally different approach and different incentives, right? We don't care about customers locking in all their data into Hightouch. We fundamentally have a belief that especially large companies want to own their data and they want to invest in a foundation like Snowflake, Databricks, Google Cloud, etc., we think that's where the market's headed, because we think data is so critical to how those companies build differentiation, build new revenue lines like advertising. And we think it's just critical to where the space is going. So we acknowledge that. We don't want to compete with those data warehouses. We don't want to say we're the places to store all your data. Really what we're focused on at Hightouch is enhancing the functionality. Those data warehouses are technical tools. They don't serve the business teams. We come in and we help you do things like marketing on top of the data warehouse. We help you do things like advertising. We help you do things like even build your own ad network, right? Some of our customers like bol.com, which is like the Amazon of the Netherlands, actually is powering their ad sales. So, determining which customers should see which ads based on the data in their data warehouse and using Hightouch to orchestrate that. So we're really coming in to solve those business problems on top of the data warehouse and not trying to be the data platform for companies. And that affects like how we go to market, that affects who we sell to, that affects our pricing model, for example, which doesn't charge you for storing a bunch of data in our platform because it's not even stored there. We're sitting on top of your warehouse. So it's fundamentally a different approach. And then, the last thing I'd mention is having, being able to create a startup from scratch and, really solve the problem that your customers have instead of also having to solve all these internal problems is very beneficial when you're competing against big companies too. For example, Salesforce and Adobe and all those players, they have, tons of different software they've created over years. They want to see how it fits together. They want to make sure it's not deviating too much. And that creates baggage that, doesn't allow them to move as quickly as, let's say, a startup can that's really focused on building only for the modern way.
That's right. And in talking about the future, no conversation would be complete about Hightouch or data if we don't talk about AI, which is a big part of what Hightouch is sitting on a lot of data. So there's a lot of applications for AI. So what is there's been a lot of advances, obviously, in AI, LLMs and multimodality and so on. What is your perspective on AI first? Maybe we'll start there. And then we can talk a little bit more about some of the innovations in Hightouch around AI.
Yeah, great question. So first, zoomed out, overall perspective, actually quite bullish. So I think that AI is going to have a lot of impact in terms of how marketing teams operate, how they communicate with their customers, and ultimately the experience and the efficacy of what they're doing. And also, allow them to do more with less resources. But I also think there's a lot of noise and attention in areas that might not be the only place to focus on when it comes to AI. So I'll talk more about that. Generative AI is obviously a very exciting topic right now. LLMs, ChatGPT, that's the product I use every day in my job, honestly, running a business. So I know it's super valuable for our customers and marketing teams, and I think it's very much underutilized as well as it stands today. Even with the existing tools we have in the market, without new startups, without anything else, just tools like ChatGPT are very underutilized in our customers today. And I think while generative AI will actually pay a lot of dividends in marketing, especially as the technology improves in terms of helping companies build much more content to go test against their customers, not have to require and rely and be slowed down by as many agencies or brand design teams, et cetera, that just like engineering teams, they have to work with sprint tickets with these teams too, because there's limited resources that are shared across the whole company, or they cost a lot of money to interact with if they're agencies and stuff like that. I think generative AI poses a lot of opportunity there, but I actually think that something really interesting that's happening is with all the excitement and attention around generative AI that was really caused, in my opinion, by ChatGPT, making it clear to everyone what the power of this technology is, what we're seeing is more excitement from business teams like marketing to say, hey, let's go prioritize figuring out data at our companies and just figuring out a lot of the basics. Like there's a lot more excitement from marketing teams and business teams and enterprises to go invest in data and figure out the basics because they know that's a prerequisite before they can go crazy with any of these type of generative AI stuff. And what I think we're finding as companies invest more in data and figure out the basics is that there's actually a lot of value in traditional machine learning as well, which isn't as much of a hot topic today. In fact, I think there actually might be even more value in traditional machine learning for the marketing and customer communication stack than there is for generative AI in a lot of ways. And what I mean by that is today, while data access and getting all your data in one place is a problem for these marketing teams who want to figure out what's the ideal thing to send my customer. There's still a lot of guesswork and slow manual iteration loops in terms of actually sending out different emails to different customers, figuring out what resonates. As an example, marketing teams today will launch a new product line as a retail company, and then they'll send out they'll go into something like Hightouch and they'll say, I want to find customers who are interested in this product line. They'll do a quick query like find customers who viewed a product that's in this product line and send them a retargeting campaign on Facebook or email, etc. But there's a lot of cases that are not covered by a hypothesis like that. For example, some customers may have only spent 30 seconds on the website. And maybe if we really dug into the data and cut it by time spent on page, we would learn that you need to spend at least 2 minutes on the page to be a customer that's actually going to transact with us, to be actually interested in it. Or maybe a customer looked at the product line because you're emailing about it and running billboards, but they're spending a lot more time looking at some jacket or t-shirt that you've been selling for years. And the ideal thing to follow up with the customer about and advertise everywhere for that customer is that, not this, new product line you launched. And I think what we're finding is that, marketing teams are limited by the human type of guesswork and analyses where humans are coming up with these hypotheses and testing in their data. And as companies invest more in data, I think machine learning is going to play a huge role in sifting through that data and finding the correlations that customers can act on. So it's really interesting. As the hype around generative AI increases due to seeing how easy it is and how powerful it is to use tools like ChatGPT, my hot take is that we'll see an explosion in terms of just traditional machine learning adoption that we've had for years and years on end, but haven't been able to utilize at an enterprise scale due to some of the underlying data maturity challenges.
That's a great hot take, which is like all the excitement and interest around Gen AI is going to lift the boat of regular machine learning and bring it to the fore and make
just
it more
general
accessible.
Data investments at these companies. Not to say generative AI isn't useful. I think it's super useful. Don't get me wrong, but I actually think there's a lot of low-hanging fruit with just machine learning, and soon enough people won't be able to tell the difference between the two. And generative AI demand is increasing the urgency to use even technologies that have existed for decades. So it's kind of interesting.
Right. So what does it mean in practice? Is it like a co-pilot for marketers? Is that what the future holds, or what will this look like?
Really great question. So we haven't launched some of the interesting stuff I'm talking about in this space right now, but we're happy to chat about it a little bit. I think today, if you go to Facebook or Google, etc., you are receiving advertisements that are, a machine learning based system in the back end on Facebook is saying are the right fit to send to you based on all the data that they know about you, how long that shows, how many times it follows up. All of those details are computed on a one-to-one basis to a particular customer. Now, when you look at how a marketing team operates, or even a product team or other teams, I'll talk about that in a second, how a marketing team operates, they're often just coming up with a hypothesis like, oh, customers who, viewed a certain product are interested in that product. Let's go promote it. And they send that campaign out to hundreds or thousands of people. But when they send those campaigns out, they're not considering everything they know about the customer to determine, is that the best campaign to send the customer today? Or should we send them this item that they've been window shopping and browsing for the last year and a coupon on it? Right. So I think something interesting is generative AI is going to make it a lot easier to make all this content, custom coupons, new promotions, new emails, etc. But the hardest problem will be figuring out what's the right one to send to customers at the right time based on all the data. And I think we'll start seeing more interactions between companies and their customers look like Facebook and Google ads, where it's highly automated and highly personalized down to a single user, instead of manual rules that marketing teams are configuring on how emails should be sent out to their customers, or even product teams are considering and engineering teams are considering when they build websites. For example, I was on a website of a very popular, fashion retailer recently, just trying to buy some t-shirts myself. And I spent about, 10 or 15 minutes browsing specific items in men's clothing, right? T-shirts and different things I need to buy that I've already bought before. I have an account with them. And then I went back to the homepage, just clicking the logo in the top left, something we've all done. And the ad for me on the front of the homepage is for some pink dress. It doesn't make any sense, right? If they knew what kind of content was going to make me convert and these product experiences were optimized, they wouldn't be showing a pink dress there. They'd be trying to retarget me for products or similar to ones that I just looked at for 15 minutes. So I really think where people are using manual rules today, like marketers building rules of who should receive what emails, product engineers just building rules like, oh, show this on the homepage, show that on the homepage. That's going to be changed to be highly dynamic one-to-one experiences, just like what we have in terms of ad networks. But obviously, companies have way more data about their customers in real time than even ad networks have in some cases.
That's right. That's right. So in a way, you're describing the holy grail for marketers, sort of a data-driven personalization that takes into account all your past behavior to put the right product to the right price with the right margin in the right channel right in front of you at the right time.
Exactly. And so I think what we're seeing is that the excitement around what ChatGPT and generative AI and stuff like that can do is making people invest in data, which is opening up more opportunities that we as a company are planning to capitalize on.
Right. So, I've been seeing the revenues coming out of Hightouch to be truly impressive. Last year, the year before, this year, just grows from strength to strength to strength. And looks like with this, with a renewed focus on machine learning and AI, the ambition is much greater than even the greatest ambition. So, where is Hightouch generally? Where do you want Hightouch to end up at? How big could this be? Where is Hightouch going long term?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, why our customers buy Hightouch today is the same reason that they're going to be pursuing Hightouch in the future as we make the solutions to these problems much more advanced using technologies like machine learning and AI that I just talked about. The fundamental problem is the same one that they buy us for today, right? Which is using all the data I have about my customers to influence how I'm engaging with them on marketing, on sales, on advertising, on my website, if I'm creating an ad network for my company and monetizing that way, right? So tons of different channels that this opportunity exists in, but the problem is fundamentally the same. We think it's a massive problem. If you look at the way that, Salesforce and even companies like Adobe on the digital side have capitalized on this market of like being a CRM, really still the big focus of companies when it comes to buying something like Salesforce or Adobe is just having a place to store all this customer data that they want to use for marketing and a UI where they can use it, right? Build an audience of customers to run a campaign against, be able to send an email to a customer, or in a sales or a service context, routing things like customers to different agents, allowing them to communicate with them, storing notes about them for future conversations. What we think is the next layer is really intelligence, right? Actually looking at all this data and helping companies determine what is the right action to take on my customer, whether it's in a marketing context, sales context, service context, advertising context, or more. And I think that's the opportunity that we're really going to be able to capitalize on, given that we are sitting at the front lines of data and sit on top of all the data, all the raw data that companies are actually having in these data lakes and data warehouses. So personally, I think this is a Salesforce kind of size market opportunity to really change what it means to, have a business tool where it's not just plumbing, it's not just doing stuff that you're asking it to, but it's actually telling you what to do.
Right. That's a big market, a big opportunity, and the right team with the right product to go after it. Switching gears a little bit to talk a little bit about your sort of founding journey. A lot of founders kind of look up to Hightouch, look up to you, Kashish, and Josh, because of the success you've had. You come from nowhere, and now you're here. Like 8 years ago, you were still in high school, and now you've raised nearly $100 million in VC from some of the top names in the business. You've got tens of millions in revenue. You put Hightouch on the map in a very short amount of time. So folks often wonder, I want to emulate your success. What is the secret of your success? What did you do right? What can I do? What do you have to share?
Yeah, great question. So a couple things come to mind from the founding journey and the last few years as well at Hightouch. So I think one thing that any of you who know us personally, for example, you, Anamitra, as our first investor in the company before we were even Hightouch, know that we didn't start this company by working on Hightouch, right? 5-6 years ago, we actually started as a travel company first, working on something completely different. COVID came around and we said, oh snap, we either need to wait out a global pandemic, which we don't know how long it'll last, or we need to find something else to do. And we chose the latter path. So in about 6 months of talking to tons of customers, we came up with the idea for Hightouch and narrowed it down to something that actually had product market fit and we could run at and start scaling, with sales and marketing and building the product and getting more customers. And I would say one thing that I think really helped us in that journey, outside of the usual stuff like grit, etc., is really seeking disvalidation. I think is this one trend that really comes to mind for me and is something that we continue to have here at the culture at Hightouch. We'd rather work on something for a day and find out that it's the wrong thing, even if we're super passionate about it, than to work on something for a year and find out that it's the wrong thing and we need to do something else. Because eventually you're going to hit the truth, right? We're always trying to truth seek because eventually the truth will tell us whether we can build a big business around something, whether a lot of customers will adopt something, whether we'll make a lot of money from something as a company. So I think we are very passionate and very excited about the space we're working on, always have all sorts of ideas. But something we really tried to look for when we were looking for our ideas is with customers, just asking like, hey, why wouldn't you pursue this? Why wouldn't this work? Is this the most important problem for you? Like, is this the number one problem for you? If not, what is? And looking for reasons for customers to tell us, don't work on that actually, so that we can work on something else. And that's the same philosophy I take with, our product team or even our sales team, here at Hightouch today, is seeking disvalidation. I think that's really important. It helps you keep it real as a founder and move much faster if you're going to get that feedback from the market faster and react to it faster. Another thing that comes to mind is, I would say, not being afraid to focus on niches. I think you always have this grand idea for a business if you're a founder, right? You always have exciting, interesting ideas of where the space will head on a 10-year horizon, or you see something that's so broken, you want to go fix it right away. And we have the same thing as founders. We have aspirations for Hightouch that we haven't even started pursuing from a product perspective, really. But the reason for that is because sometimes to build a business, you need a flywheel and you need to start somewhere, right? And there's opportunities that are easier to pursue as a startup and opportunities that are sometimes harder to jump right into. And as founders, it was really hard for us to take a step back and say, okay, we're going to initially brand our company as reverse ETL, right? Such a niche term that only makes sense to a certain subset of people who are already thinking about data and ETL and all of that stuff. Because we had all these ideas of where to take the business. For example, like additional products that we've pursued today, like allowing marketers to use all the data in the data warehouse, or powering things like website personalization and ad networks using data in the data warehouse. And those weren't obviously coming across with a term like reverse ETL that we initially went to market with. But I think we realized that with reverse ETL, we could find all these data teams who are trying to solve a problem right now today. They want to take data from the warehouse and get it into business systems that they use across the company, like Salesforce, Adobe, Facebook ads, you name it. And while that isn't the grand vision for the company, that's a problem today that we can collect hundreds of customers or thousands of customers on. So we jumped on it and we did just that. And we derived the path from that to our broader vision. And that's what we continue to do as a company. And when we were pursuing reverse ETL, we were 100% focused on it. Now it's a more stable surface area. We're always improving it as a company, but we're focused on the next challenge, right? And I think having that humility to take a step back and say, okay, there's a small thing that I can focus on right now and I can get the most out of it. And here's how it plays into my broader vision is really important, in my opinion.
Right, makes sense. And then you've been particularly successful at positioning the product in a very reductive way that is simple and intuitive for your sort of end customers to understand. Have you always had this skill, positioning and marketing and branding skill? Is it something you developed when you were a teenager, or was it during the process of going from the travel company to Hightouch? Like, where did this secret DNA around marketing come into being?
Great question. No, I don't think we always had this skill. I think we, especially Kashish, right, my co-founder, is very good on storytelling and speaking to things, etc. But finding the right way to message things to an audience. But specifically branding the company and finding the positioning has always actually been a challenge in an area we spend a lot of time thinking about and working on and iterating on at Hightouch. One skill I would say that has carried over from the early age is just resourcefulness. And I think as a startup founder, we had no experience in marketing and sales and all of that stuff, but we just hustled our network, asked for introductions from people like you, from past colleagues, and then asked for more introductions from those people, and so on and so forth. And that resourcefulness is really how we got up to speed on these things. But yeah, I would say it's not a skill we've had before, but it's a skill that we've started to learn through the founding journey. And I think it's super important to just focus on as a founder, because in the end of the day, like your sales, your marketing, like every part of the company will be affected by the core positioning and the core story that you're taking to the market. So it's super important to spend a lot of time there. So I shared one learning earlier on positioning, which I think is focusing on a niche initially and having a lot of focus, like laser focus on an ideal customer profile, even if you have a broader vision for the company. Because it's hard to do too many things at once, and it's hard to build something broad that resonates with everyone, like the iPhone. It's hard to do something like that right out the gate. But I think another learning that we had through the journey, which is actually a learning that we heard from another company, and one of these calls that we took, just trying to learn about marketing, is tapping into customers' like mental availability, is how our VP of marketing now phrases it. And basically what I mean by that is if customers are looking for X and you can provide them X better, just tap into that, right? So if customers are looking for a CDP, they're searching CDP this, CDP that, they're asking customers, they're asking consultants about what's the best way to pursue customer data platform, et cetera. We could have named our product something else, right? We could have named it all sorts of other things because we want to be different. But naming it something that's like a variation on what the customer's already thinking about, like composable CDP or reverse ETL, I think taps into this like mind share that already exists in the market and gives something that gives people something that they can easily understand if they have some prior context. And I think that's been a tactic that's been useful for us twice so far in building the company. And it's not a one-size-fits-all problem, but it's something I would consider for other companies.
So easy to understand, but a little different and better.
Yeah, exactly. Tapping into something that customers already know, so that they can easily, get a reference point of what you're talking about if you're introducing a new concept to the market.
You and your co-founders are often talking to customers who are competing against competitors who are more senior than you. They have more experience. They are enterprise salespeople, or they've been marketers and CMOs for a long time, or they've been in this business for a long time. Have you experienced any sort of pushback? Have you experienced any? Have you had to overcome questions around you guys are so young? What do you know about this space? How you were able to relate to them? Because clearly the results showed that you can. I'm just wondering how you were able to do it.
How we're able to do that? Yeah, I think it's a couple things. One, I wouldn't say we always position we know the audience, we know the environment. We don't always position ourselves as the young folks in the room. It comes down to the storytelling stuff you talked about earlier. And we're not making up lies, but it's how we position things, right? Before founding Hightouch, I worked at a company that's in this CDP space, right, called Segment. Many large Segment customers are now using the Hightouch product, actually, like Chime and various different companies we work with. But we really find those things that make us an expert and bring that to the top of our brand and the top of the story that we present to the CMOs of companies or different prospective customers or different partners that we want to partner with, like a Snowflake or like a Braze or companies like that, to really establish credibility. So, even if you don't have some background in the space you're pursuing as a startup founder, you could find something to establish credibility. An example is a customer or a company you talk to in the early days that is a super large company, like, I don't know, Walmart. And you talk to Walmart, this is all hypothetical, and internally, the way they built things looked exactly like your solution. And the reason for that was these challenges they ran into with everything on the market. And then you saw that same pattern at Walmart, with Instacart, and you saw it with Netflix. And we have some other stories like that from the early days of doing customer discovery when maybe none of those companies are customers of ours right now. But that establishes credibility and proof that it's not just a random person's perspective on where the market's headed, but the leading companies out there are proving that. And you had that insight earlier than anyone else did, which establishes credibility about yourself. So you have to find ways to storytell and establish credibility. No matter if you're younger or older, It's just a reality. If you're in a, you don't have that credibility naturally, you need to find a way to establish it. The second thing I would say is really having a high degree of curiosity, right? You said, how do we relate with people much, more senior than us, more experienced, older than us potentially? Just having a really high degree of curiosity. And I think it ties into the same mentality behind resourcefulness that I talked about earlier, but really just being genuinely curious. What is the day in the life of this CMO at a company? Researching all about their company and the evolution of it and the last companies they've worked at, and just understanding in and out and coming with some really interesting, genuine questions to the table. Because I think people can tell when there's genuine curiosity and there's kind of falsified curiosity. And I think, just having a really high degree of curiosity sparks really good conversations, which builds really good relationships. And in that builds credibility for you to get your first big customer or your next big sale, or to hire your, the next star employee. So I think that's another thing that's really served us well, that I just really encourage to any founders, especially kind of underdogs, is having that curiosity that helps them really stand out.
Right. That's great advice. I know we're coming up on time, so I have one last question for you, which is, when you first started on the founding journey, even before Hightouch, and then now that you've started Hightouch and it's going really well. Long way to go, but going really well. Is the founding journey what you thought it would be, or were there any big surprises? What have been some of these sort of the big learnings you've had about yourself as a founder in this time?
Yeah, great question. So earlier you asked if it's getting easier or harder now that we're bigger, we're going up against bigger competitors. I think before I started the company, I thought it gets easier and easier over time, and now I'm sold that it just becomes different, maybe even harder, but definitely just different, and doesn't become easier for sure. So that's one learning I've had. Another learning I've had is, I think, before starting a company, sometimes I didn't have the same confidence in myself that I could learn all these new skills like sales or marketing or product, etc. Because I hadn't done it before. But I think now, starting a company, I realized that, hey, if you have immense curiosity and immense resourcefulness and you're going to put in the hours, you can kind of learn anything, even if you don't have a background in that. And I think that's given me a new confidence to take on new challenges as a founder. Is just having this always learning mindset and the humility, but also it's given me the confidence that we can just do that. We can just learn anything we want, even if we don't have experience in it before, and jump on or take on any opportunity we want. And I think that confidence is important to actually instill in yourself as a founder, because it allows you to take on bigger bets and bigger challenges and do things that other startups around you might not do, right? By having that confidence. So I think combining humility and confidence is very important, I would say. And something that as a founder, you need to make sure you keep telling yourself to have, because I think it actually changes your outlook on what you're willing to do, what kind of bets you're willing to take. Are you willing to say, hey, I'm going to go and compete with Salesforce and Adobe? If you have the mindset that if you put in the right hard work, you can find a way to crack something hard like that, then you're a lot more likely to succeed, is my honest opinion.
That's very well said. Confidence in yourself and confidence in your ability kind of allows you to change your outlook and take more risk.
Exactly.
Something that only founders can do. Employees can't do sometimes.
Yeah, and I think that confidence, it comes from the humility that you don't know everything, but you can learn it and you can figure it out, right? If you have the right curiosity, resourcefulness, and hard work. Right. So I think that's super important, and it's a lesson that I don't think about a lot, but as you asked me, I just came to mind.
Right. So there you have it, folks. So if you have the four: confidence, curiosity, resourcefulness, and willingness to work hard, anything is possible. What a great way to end it, Tejas. Thank you so much for joining the Pre-Seed Show. This has been a terrific episode. I can't wait until it comes out.
Cool. Thank you, Anamitra. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure.